Right, well here's a story for you. One day in about 1904, maybe 1905, my mother would have been, say, 5 years old, and she lived in a farm just outside Port Erin in the Isle of Man. It was up on a hill and it looked down onto Port Erin Bay. One day she was playing in the garden and a big silver car came down the road and it stopped at the gate, and the chap got out and he went up to the door and he spoke to my grandmother, and he offered my grandmother £1,000 for my mother, but she refused because she was gorgeous. She had this long red hair, or ringlets, and really outstanding. But anyway, it didn't.
It didn't take that.
Anything. No.
She refused.
Yes, she refused. Yeah. Then another time, I was sitting on the step in my house in Liverpool. I was about 6 years old, and I saw my Uncle Jack coming down the street with a big parcel under his arm. And I thought, oh, I wonder what he's got for me. When he got to the door, he gave me this parcel. I opened it, and inside was this beautiful doll made of celluloid. I took it out, and I thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. So I decided to call her Princess Margaret Rose. So she was my very special doll for quite some time. Then one day we got a word from my father to say that we were going to be evacuated to Yorkshire, and my mother would take us up on the train. So there was no room for Princess Margaret Rose to come with us, so she had to stay behind. We got on the train to go to Yorkshire, and suddenly the siren went when we were about halfway there. And the train stops, nothing moves, you see, once the siren goes, and all lights are turned out, and that's it. And the train was full of soldiers and Air Force people going back to bases. And we were sitting on our suitcases in the corridor for about 4 hours. We eventually got to Yorkshire, and we were taken to a house, and an elderly lady lived there, and she was going to let us, rent part of her house. And she was a very nice lady, but she took a dislike to my brother because he was a little horror. He was very, very spoiled, and she didn't like him at all. She used to make lovely dandelion and burdock and lemonade, real lemonade. And I always had some, but he didn't get any. And one day, anyway, we were there, and my mother got a telegram to say our house had been bombed in Liverpool, and could she come back? So she decided to go back and take my brother with her, and she left me up there for 12 months.
Really?
Yeah, 8 to 12 months. And I was only 7, and I had
Where was Anne?
I wasn't born. I'm 14 years older than Anne.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
She wasn't even thought about. So I used to walk about 2 miles to school each day and back again on my own. There were no other children around that area.
Yeah.
And yes, I was up there for about a year, and then she came to get me, and we went back to Liverpool, and we had to go and live with my maternal grandmother.
Yeah.
And I said, "Where's Princess Margaret Rose?" And she'd gone. The house had been looted after the bombing.
Yeah.
And everything had been stolen, all my mother's lovely things, lovely glassware and dressing table sets that were going to be mine. All really nice things, they'd all gone, even bedding and everything like that.
Did you ever see your old house again?
Yes, oh yes, it was put back so that we could live in it.
Yeah.
But we had no windows for maybe 12 months. 18 months.
Sounds like my house with no doors.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yes. But we survived, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, you just got on with it,
Yeah.
yes. Because there were days when you wouldn't have any gas or anything.
Yeah.
You know, it just wasn't possible. So, and then at night, once it got dark, we couldn't have any light showing. We charged 5 shillings if the warden came round.
Yeah.
There was even a chink of light showing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, you said you went to school up in Yorkshire.
Yes.
Was it hard, like, going back to school, like, back into Liverpool?
Oh, I've been to so many schools.
Really?
Count the places we moved to. I started off at Our Lady of Mount Carmel in
Yeah.
Liverpool 8,
Yeah.
Hyde Park Street. Then, for a period, the school wasn't opened, and we would have a class, say, in someone's house, maybe morning or afternoon. We only went to school for half a day.
Yeah.
Then we moved to Yorkshire. Then we moved to Warwickshire, Stratford-upon-Avon.
Yeah.
We lived in a village called Snitterfield, which is just outside Stratford-on-Avon. I went to school there. And then we went down to Redruth in Cornwall. Went to school there.
Okay, very good. You got about.
When I was 9, which would be about 1942, 43, because my father was in the army, I was offered a place at a fee-paying school. The army would pay the fees.
Yeah.
So I was taken along to Belrive Convent in Sefton Park,
Yeah.
and I started school there, and I stayed there till I was 17.
So you stayed, that's quite rare to sort of stay in school for so long.
So
Yeah, it's good to get out.
about 9. So I sort of started in the kindergarten, sort of the end of the kindergarten, with a nun called Mother Nunziata, who was very nice. And then when I went into the big school, the headmistress was Mother Emmanuel, and she was Lady Mabel Scaresbrick from Scaresbrick Hall.
Oh, right.
And her brother was Lord Scaresbrick, and he'd gone off to be a Jesuit priest somewhere. And she'd joined the FCJs, the Faithful Companions of Jesus.
Yeah.
And she was the headmistress. She used to tell us stories, you know, about the hall and what it was like to live there. So I stayed at school till I left when I was 17. And many years later, when I took my daughter to Pole's Convent in Hertfordshire, which was their flagship school,
Yeah.
Cheska came home one day and said, you know, when we go to church, Mum, there's a funny old nun and she sits at the back, and if you move or you do anything, she puts her finger in your back and it really hurts. And I thought, can't be, she's long dead. So we went down to a Christmas fair, and the nuns would come in and chat, you know, to parents, and lots of old girls would come back. So we were having tea in the dining room, and Jessica said, oh, look, there she is. And this little old lady, because they didn't wear habits then, you know, they clothes. She said, that's her. So I went over to her, and I thought, yes, it is her. She'd shrunk.
Yeah.
She'd definitely shrunk, but the face was still the same. And I said, Mother Emmanuel. And she went, yes. And I said, you probably won't remember me. And she looked at me and she said, Margaret Finn. No, then after all those years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was her. She
Really?
was yes, like a Dowager Duchess, Cheska described her as. Yeah. And she died not long afterwards.
Really?
Yeah. So she must have been in her 90s.
Yeah.
Must have been. She was old. Yeah. My nurse's training. So I went along to Walton Hospital, and they had a scheme whereby until you were 18 you become a ward clerk, and you had a little uniform, blue uniform and a cap. But what you did, you helped the sister in her office, you know, you did all the filing and any messages and things like that,
Yeah.
answer the telephone. So I was a ward clerk there for about 6 months, and then I went into the preliminary training school, and we were in there for 3 months, I think. Yeah, 3 months in the prelim. And most of the intake at Walton was Irish. And we had quite a nice time, and we lived in the nurses' home because you couldn't live out then. And I was in the new home, which was facing onto Walton Vale, Walton Road. And my room was at the very end. Now, when you went out at night, you had to be in by 10:30, which wasn't always possible, you see. Now, if there was a nice porter on the lodge, he'd just sign you in for 10:30, and you just had to risk it to get into the home without being seen.
Yeah.
If it was very late, because my room was at the very end, there was a drain pipe that came right down. So you had to have a boyfriend with you, and he would help you up and push you in through the window at the far end. And that's how you got into it. But you had to be very careful, not?
Yeah.
Because there's always a home sister wandering around.
Did you get caught very often?
I didn't get caught at all. But I did get caught. I did get reported a few times for coming in late.
Yeah.
It wasn't a porter that sort of knew you. And the matron didn't like me. She thought she was a flighty piece. I was a flighty piece. You weren't allowed to wear makeup on duty. You had to have your hair well up above your collar. And she'd do a ward round every day. It was a massive place, even in those days. And she was always very heavily made up.
Yeah.
So I thought, sod this for a game of soldiers. I'll wear makeup when I go on duty in this, just shit, which I did. And I was always getting told off, you see, for wearing pan stick it was.
Pan stick.
Max Factor pan stick.
Oh, very nice.
And it was quite heavy, but, you know, always thought you looked gorgeous
Yeah.
in those days. Anyway, it got to the stage where I was in so much trouble. I did my prelim exam, passed it, and left. And from there I went to train as a buyer at TJ Hughes and Owen Owens, who worked between the two. And I stuck it for about 6 months, and then I didn't like this job at all. It was okay, you know, but I didn't want to do it forever.
Yeah.
So I applied to the Southern Hospital.
Royal Southern.
The Royal Southern. Anyway, I was accepted there.
Yeah.
I had to do an exam, a sort of entrance exam, but I already had my preliminary
Yeah.
exam. And I went on from there to qualify in 1956. I did 4 years there.
That's where she met me.
Really?
So we've been friends since then, you see.
Excellent.